Amazing, wonderful, incredible to see all of you. There's been so much anticipation this summer for this moment, and I'm just so excited that it's here, which sounds kind of crazy because normally every summer I'm just loving my time and my space and, you know, the ability to rest and relax. And this summer I have just felt like, okay, let's just go. Let's just get school going. So welcome. We know how challenging all of this is, and we are here to support you, and we're very excited that you're here today. Before we get started with our keynote from Pasquale, we wanted to bring in the voices of our students. And thanks to our board members, Henry Mills and Brian Lim, they were able to get some students to give some perspective of what distance learning was like for them in the spring. The intention of this time is not to make people feel bad or to make people feel like they didn't do their very best, because we know that you all had to turn on a dime and all of a sudden reinvent education as we knew it. And everyone did the absolute best job that they could. And we wanted to make sure that you understood what that experience felt like for our students, so that you can do your best job in planning for the fall. Their voices are so important, and their voices really matter, and have actually, with your voices as well and with the family's voices, has really helped us to craft what our priorities are for this year. So we're going to start with an 8th grade voice.
Distance learning in the spring of last school year was enjoyable because of the flexibility that many teachers had in their schedules. You could ask them questions during breaks, and that was unlike physical school, so I liked that part. I learned that even though I'm not going to physical school, getting ready in the morning and eating regularly, as if it were a regular school day, helped my productivity. Distance learning, however, did have its downsides. There were many times where I felt unmotivated to do my work because of how easy it was to walk away from it. There were times where I felt overwhelmed because of the difficulties that arose in my work, because sometimes I felt the directions to complete assignments were not as thorough enough as they could be. My little sister expressed that she disliked the strange schedule of classes because they took place later during the day instead of earlier. Distance learning gave me more time to myself, and while that was helpful in a way, it also left more time for me to procrastinate. I felt alone at some times due to the lack of teamwork in my classes, and the relationship with my peers I felt became distant, and I had a slightly harder time communicating with them because the only time to really reach out to them was through Zoom calls. Tutors or emotional support may come in handy for many students, including myself, this coming school year. I understand that we all went through a difficult time with sudden schedule changes, but I think to aid these sudden changes, more option of communication between students and teachers, educational and/or emotional support can prove effective.
Okay, now we are going to hear the voice of a high school student. Oops.
It was easygoing in regards to assigning coursework, and she really made an effort to listen to her students. She did check up on my peers and I liked the fact that she did not place pressure on us. I know that assignments will be mandatory this upcoming semester, but her even-tempered approach made me feel comfortable when it came to completing my schoolwork. Question 2. What is something you learned about yourself during that time? I learned that I benefit more from social interaction than I presumed, and that it would be in my best interest to have a daily schedule of sorts. Number 3. How did distance learning affect you, others in your household? Distance learning made me incredibly bored, but I know that I'm going to have to deal with it this year. The other people in my household are not currently in school. Question 4. What do you wish your teacher knew about you during distance learning? I.e., what was happening in your life, what were you feeling, etc. I wish that my teachers understood that I had not stopped doing my schoolwork due to disinterest in their courses. I stopped completing assignments because I was feeling melancholic. I have found better ways to cope with quarantine over the summer, but quarantine was initially taking a toll on me emotionally. I found myself dealing with an existential crisis and ruminating on negative events in my past. I did not see a point in finishing assignments because I knew that it would not matter in regards to my GPA. Question 5. What types of support do you need to be successful in distance learning next year? I would benefit greatly from receiving emotional support. I don't know whether or not this would be appropriate, but reminders to complete my assignments would also help me maintain success in distance learning next year. I want to succeed regardless of circumstances, and I will definitely complete assignments this year, but forming a relationship with my teachers will help me. Thank you.
And one more high school voice.
Hello, I was a junior at Alameda High School during the spring quarantine, and I will be answering some questions about my experiences during distance learning. Question 1. What experiences did you appreciate during distance learning in the spring? I appreciated that teachers took the time and effort to make Zoom classes as close to in-person classes as possible. Question 2. What is something you learned about yourself during that time? I learned that I was more lazy and unproductive when I didn't have a set schedule. Question 3. How did distance learning affect you, others in your household? Distance learning didn't impact me that much, other than making me more lazy and unmotivated because I didn't have an everyday set schedule of going to school and going to different classrooms every day. And I was lucky that in my household, my parents and my siblings were not affected much by me constantly being in Zoom classes. Question 4. What do you wish your teacher knew about you during distance learning? I wish my teacher knew that it was a lot harder to feel motivated to do work and stay diligent during distance learning because we weren't going to school, we weren't around our peers who were also working, and we weren't in the classroom setting. Question 5. What types of support do you need to be successful in distance learning next year? I think that as long as teachers are communicative and patient, then I will be successful in distance learning next year. Thank you.
All right. So I'd like for you in the chat right now to share what you heard, an aha that you had, or something that really resonated with you in hearing the student voices. We're going to take about 3 minutes to just have you write down in the chat what you heard. Okay, thank you. Really appreciate your thinking, your understanding, and these thoughts and these experiences that our students have are so important in us forming what we're going to do this year for them. I am going to pass it over to our amazing, hardworking, patient, resilient Superintendent Pasquale Scuderi. I just want to let you know that I don't think he has had maybe a full night's sleep or actually any kind of rest this summer. And so I'm just totally amazed by him and his dedication. And I'm just excited that I get to introduce him this morning. So without further ado, Pasquale Scuderi has some words for us.
Thanks, Sarah. That's really nice of you. And welcome to all of you. I know we all are at various points in our relationships with relating to people in these types of spaces, but I think despite that barrier, I feel pretty privileged and honored to have a bit of your time this morning as we jump into this work together at what is still a pretty extraordinary time. I want to acknowledge up front the fact that the shifts and the changes and the complexities of this summer have driven us more than a little nuts at the district level. And I know there's another one of them. And I know that confusion has caused delays in work assignments and schedules and staffing that I know are adding to your frustration and anxiety. I want to name that and acknowledge that, but also let you know that I think those delays and those frustrations really are a byproduct or a derivative of the circumstances. It's not because staff has not had an intense focus on trying to solve for all the variables that we're trying to solve. We have had teachers, principals, district staff participating in working groups and really working all summer long, giving up their time and time with their families to try to figure this stuff out. So again, I want to acknowledge the frustration that may be bringing for some of you and kind of explain it. I'm offering that not as an excuse, but just an explanation. I think that's kind of in the spirit of what we need to do this year moving forward. Just be really open and honest with each other about what's happening. We are, in my view, collectively, as a community of educators, sitting in a situation that is more challenging than the one we were sitting in the spring. Now, that might not be the ideal sentiment, the ideal rah-rah sentiment to include in a set of kickoff remarks. But again, I think being completely transparent and honest about where we are is the way we will develop the connectivity and trust and flexibility to have a shot at being reasonably successful this year for our students and families and for ourselves, given the limitations and constraints we're working within. Public health is never far from my thoughts, hasn't been in the last 5 months. It's become a big part of what I do daily as an educator because it is what happens in the public health sphere is really the prerequisite to any kind of serious conversation that we're going to have about if and when we can return to in-person instruction. Most of you know that in mid-January, the governor's office and the State Department of Public Ed made a declaration that schools in counties that were on the state watch list would not be able to talk about reopening until they had come off of that watch list and then stayed off that watch list for 14 days. This week, that conversation has been re-energized. Many of you have probably heard or read that San Diego County, Santa Cruz County have come off that watch list. But I want you to know that I have spoken to people in both of those districts, and they are still somewhat of a distance from any kind of in-person return. The fact that they have been given the opportunity to consider still means that there is a significant amount of processing, conferring with local public health officials, with teaching staff, community members, et cetera. In Alameda County, we are not close to where we need to be yet. One of the key metrics and goals for coming off that state watch list is that a county will have fewer than 100 cases per 100,000 residents. And as of Tuesday, I got a little busy yesterday and wasn't able to check the data. We were still north of 260 cases per 100,000 residents. So the data will really need to kind of change its trajectory and do that in a sustained way over time before we even get off the list. And I probably shouldn't, it's probably ill-advised to make predictions, but I want to say generally, I think we're going to be in this distance learning format for the foreseeable future. I know that's ambiguous. I wish I could put a month on it or an end of the year, calendar year on it. And I can't right now, but I've watched the patterns in data and the response to that data from public health over the last couple of months. And my sense is that we are going to be sitting in this format for a while. There's another public health briefing this afternoon that I will attend. Obviously, if something changes or shifts, we'll share that with you right away. But just know that we are not going to be in a hurry to do anything that would put your safety or the safety of our students in jeopardy. There is too much conflict in the data. There is too much shifting and evolution in kind of the interpretation and direction of that data for us to make any dramatic move. So I can commit to you that we will be extremely deliberate and transparent in any and all conversations about when we might be ready for an in-person return. I mentioned to the elementary folks this morning because they had questions about this waiver concept that doesn't apply to secondary, but I just will briefly say to you all that that waiver concept of being able to allow elementary schools to reopen, that is still, in my view, quite a ways away. We may hear something about that this afternoon. There is no application process in Alameda County right now. The team of docs at the County Public Health Office are working on that. And again, that is something maybe more germane to the elementary folks, but we will keep you involved and in the loop as well. I want you to know, and I know many of you share this sentiment, that our schools are shuttered right now because of a preeminent concern about staff and student safety, and I think it is appropriate and right for that to be the position we are taking. But I cannot let myself let go of the fact or let myself be free of acknowledging that that is coming at a cost for many of our families. That for many of our students, many of the most vulnerable members of our community, our shuttering of schools has really raised the probability and the possibility of educational injury, of further educational inequity. And again, I still think that where we are is the right place to be, but it motivates me to think more broadly with you all about how we optimize distance learning to mitigate some of those adverse impacts that we know are taking as we make the best of a set of imperfect decisions for our district. So what now? How's that for a transition statement? Many of us have become accustomed to the impact that this pandemic has had on our lives in general. But I'm not sure we've taken time to acknowledge that it's had a pretty profound effect on us in how we perform our work and how we see ourselves in our work. The radical change in context, the limitation on the tools and skills that we've depended on as educators for years, those things kind of being put in the freezer because of the limitations of spaces like this. I just want to name that to say that it is okay for us to be feeling a little frustrated, a little bitter, and a little sad about the situation. We can acknowledge those feelings and still commit to move forward together towards doing the best job we can in these less than ideal circumstances. And people ask what our focus will be, or how will we move forward? And I frankly think that our focus has not changed. The context in which we do the work in pursuit of that focus is really what's changed. I've held up this model before. Many members of my team have. Some of you may be familiar with it, and it comes from Richard Elmore, this really simple and I think elegant concept of the instructional core. And if you picture a triangle, at the top of that triangle is the word teacher, at that second point is student, and at that third point is content or curriculum. Those are the three interdependent relationships that to me are the nucleus of the atom in public education. Those are the relationships that matter most. Those are the things that when they are firing on all cylinders, make us good at what we do for kids. And so again, I don't think our focus or our goal or what we need to invest in has changed. We've just had a layer of complexity put on top of that that's going to force us to think differently. Will that be easy? Absolutely not. But I think I am sharing a room right now with people who have never experienced a job that has felt particularly easy. So I think where we are this year is doing hard a different way. I've watched this firsthand this week. My wife is a teacher. I've seen her have to start the engine with her students this year in the limitation of this format, with our two young daughters initiating a nonstop assault on the continuity and the sanity of both her work and mine. I know that is an experience that some of you with younger kids and even older kids are sharing, and it's part of the composite picture of what makes what we're about to do so challenging. I don't mean to oversimplify, but again, I think the relationships and the core concepts are the same. We just have to figure out a way to do them as well as possible in a new context. We won't have proximity at our disposal to catch behavioral cues the way we would in our classrooms. We won't be able to work or redirect student attention or behavior challenges the way we might simply in person, or even administer that much needed shot of affirmation or confidence that kids might need when they are struggling. All those are things that we're going to have to think creatively about how to do those differently in this space. I think the art and science of teaching has probably never been harder given these constraints and limitations, but it has also, in my view, rarely, if ever, been as important. Not just in terms of what's happening in the public health context, but what is happening socially across our country. This work is critical, and you all are key to that. You all are the centerpiece of that as far as I'm concerned. You will be the facilitators of connection at a time where distance is the norm. You all are going to be the portals to new concepts and new ideas and new thinkings, where while we are sitting in a culture that is marked right now by generalized isolation, you have the power, as you always have, to couple care with content to facilitate student growth, and you will hold those spaces that where we can, as Paulo Freire says, help students manage their own transformations. So again, this work, your work, our work together, I don't think has ever been as important. Will it be easy? Again, no, but that does not undermine or negate the fact that it is super important right now. Betty Lucet is a woman who is an author and an organic chemist, and she wrote, and I'm going to read it so I don't mess it up. She wrote that creativity's greatest moments to act are in times of mounting confusion and chaos. She also notes that another way to describe change is that chaos is often necessary first, so that creativity then has disassembled components available to connect into new forms. And I wonder, as we are sitting in this chaos and confusion and uncertainty, if there are not opportunities for us to look at the components and disassembled pieces of what we've called school for a long time and think about reassembling them in ways that are more equitable and more just and more engaging for our students. Can we change some arcane and archaic notions about what constitutes intelligence? Because for years, those narrow definitions, in my view, have marginalized the creativity and beauty and intellectual identities of many students' home culture. Too often, I have seen this pointed at our Black students, our children of African descent. So I think it's time to think and act differently, despite the fact that we have a number of logistical and operational challenges in front of us. Maybe, in fact, it is the limitations of the current format that are going to give us the space to kind of reset some old habits and patterns and think differently about what we're sitting with now and what's possible on the other end of this. And what this all looks like doesn't come from me in some sort of invocation or keynote. This is something that we really need to define together as a community of educators. We won't always agree, clearly, but I think if we practice this notion of radical open-mindedness and become less fixated on being right and more interested in finding the joy and the positivity in what actually works right for kids, we'll all be in a better place. And I am open to your ideas, and I am wanting to be in dialogue with as many people as possible in our system to navigate not only this time, but to really form ourselves into a community of educators that can problem solve for the huge academic and equity challenges that we still have in front of us. To say that we will co-construct what this looks like together doesn't mean that I don't have a few ideas about what the goals and priorities of our system should be, but I think how we make meaning of those goals and priorities and how we implement them, again, will be dependent on collaboration. And Sarah will talk in a bit of detail in just a minute of how we have outlined some of those goals and priorities in response to the work that we got through the extensive engagement we did around the creation of the graduate profile last year, a graduate profile that will still serve as our North Star, if you will, in terms of the types of skills and dispositions we want students to leave us with at the end of their time in AUSD. So while I value plans and profiles and standards and organizing things that way, that's a bit of who I am, a tad task-oriented to be sure. I'm also cognizant that those plans and those standards and those ideas are only going to be as good as you, our educators, are in the relationships you build with students and in the creative and unique ways that you deliver content and learning experiences to students, especially, again, given the limitations and constraints that we are sitting in right now. I know it feels like that we are asking you and that we all in general are being asked to do more at a time where people probably righteously feel that they have less to give, that their most important and valuable tools have been put in the freezer. But I do think if we can summon up as much extra effort and as much initiative as possible, it obviously will be good for our students, but I think it'll be good for us because for most of us, our greatest gratitude and our greatest affirmation of being in this work is that gratitude and affirmation that we derive from watching students grow and progress, knowing that we played some small or large part in that progression. Paulo Freire, again, writing in the book, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed, basically said that education can go a couple of different ways. It can be used to dominate or adapt people to oppressive conditions, or it can be used to liberate and essentially become freedom in practice. And I want to be unapologetic, if mildly melodramatic, about the power of that last statement, that we as educators have the power to facilitate freedom in practice for our students. I think that sentiment can be applied in many, many different ways to our current work, our current context, and our current culture. But I do believe we can, even with the limitations we're sitting in, strive to empower kids to challenge and question and ultimately transform oppressive conditions rather than adapt to them. I think that we can, through education, guide and empower students away from internalizing the limiting beliefs about themselves based on someone else's notion of scholarship and intellectualism, often discrepancies and disparities and discriminatory perspectives based on race, class, gender identity, and a host of other issues. It seems pretty obvious to me this morning and in our current context that the world needs reinforcements right now, reinforcements in the form of thoughtful and creative and empathetic people. And the road to that kind of self-actualization, in my experience, my personal experience and my experience as an educator, is that type of the path to that type of self-actualization generally makes its way through a school or a classroom that is populated with a caring, talented, and committed set of educators and teachers. I don't think that's different now. In fact, I think it's more important now to hold our power and our agency and our creativity in that light on behalf of students. Will our classrooms and our schools look different this fall? For sure. They did last spring. But again, I have no choice nor any desire to be anything but confident in our ability as an educational collective to solve problems and support kids in this challenging context, to support each other. Please take care of yourselves. Please take care of each other. This is going to be difficult. And I really do, again, just feel that together, if we are focused, if we are supportive, if we are radically open-minded, we all have the potential to bring some very influential and transformative and creative light into our students' lives, despite the very pronounced limitations and constraints that we're working with. I feel proud to be able to sit with you. I feel privileged to be a part of this community. And again, I have neither a choice or a desire to be anything but confident in our ability to solve these problems for our students, and by virtue of serving our students, to fulfill ourselves in our work, which has taken its own set of punches over the last several months. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your engagement. I look forward to seeing you all in various sessions today. And I look forward to working together with you throughout the year. I'm deeply appreciative of your time, and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Pasquale. Second time I've heard that today, and it's still powerful and resonating, so thank you. I'm going to very quickly and briefly take you through some of the information that Pasquale alluded to in terms of our priorities and practices. And I just want to say that the priorities and practices that we put together for this year, the goals that we put together for this year, came directly from the voices of our staff, of our families, and our students. We really want to make sure that our students, and you heard this from their voices, that they are participating in experiential learning, that they're invested, engaged, and that they have things to do every day that keep them excited. We know how important reading, thinking, talking, and writing about complex texts is, and we want students to be doing that every day, not just in their English courses, but in all of their courses. Talking is going to be one of the most important things that they can do during this time. It's the way that they're going to be able to do what's the third bullet, which is establish and maintain healthy and rewarding relationships, not only with one another, but also with you. And as Pasquale named, this is a moment in time like none other. And equity has always been the most important goal, but right now it's even more evident and clear. We want our students to be able to dialogue about equity issues and take action. In order for them to do that, we need to support you, and we want our teachers to be able to really understand how to use the priority standards for each content area and grade level, so that students can have those meaningful experiences with talking and texts and tasks. We want students, again, to have lots of opportunities to talk, and so we need to support you in helping think through in this distance learning world what that's going to look like. You heard it loud and clear from students. They need positive relationships. They need those with you, and they need those with one another. And we need to support you in really thinking about how do you interrupt conversations and how when inequity is at the heart of those, and what do you do to help dismantle what is a white supremacist educational culture. Leaders, we are going to be, we all as leaders need to support everyone. We are all leaders. The formal leaders at your school sites need to help you understand how to implement curriculum in this time, work collaboratively with you, again, help support that meaningful engagement and talk that's happening in your distance learning experiences. And just help build the capacity of our staff and students to have those discussions and to interrupt inequity. We as a district need to support this, and we need to keep equity and rigorous content at the forefront of every decision that we make. We need to maximize interaction and independence in this time when students are, when you are helping students use blended experiences for their learning. And as always, we need to integrate social and emotional and trauma-informed approaches and support you in figuring out what those look like in this time. And we need to be vigilant. We need to be an actively anti-racist teaching and learning organization. So with that, I am going to once again appreciate you all and thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work with us this year. And I am wishing you the very best school year, knowing how challenging this is. We are all doing this for the first time together, and while it is incredibly challenging, I love puzzles, and I see this year as a massive puzzle, and I see us all as helping put those pieces together. So with that, have a wonderful rest of the conference, and we are here. Reach out if you need anything. And thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a wonderful day. I have to close this quickly so that I can get to my next one. Thank you. Susan, I'm going to end this and get into my next one, so you can follow me, hopefully.
Okay, I'll follow you.
I can just use the regular links to get into other meetings, right?
Yes.
Like